Raise your right hand, please, sir. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may have a seat right there. And Mr. Truman, if you will give me a prompt at the proper time.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You wish for me to proceed with both instructions?
No, sir.
Go right ahead.
You are Robert Hinman.
Yes, sir, I am.
Tell us your background in education and employment, please.
My name's Robert Hinman, and it's probably best if I go chronologically from my first professional job to present to help keep things in order. I joined the United States Marine Corps in 1989 and got discharged in 1993 off of active duty, and joined the Beckley Police Department here in Beckley as a law enforcement officer. I worked at the Beckley Police Department 4.5 years and applied for the West Virginia State Police, and then was hired by the West Virginia State Police in 1997. I stayed with the State Police until the year 2000. I left law enforcement and went into doing private investigation for about a year for a local attorney here in Beckley. In 2001, I went back into law enforcement, worked at the Bluefield Police Department for 2 years. I was doing that while I was finishing an undergraduate degree at Bluefield State College. Finished that in 2003, went back into the private sector, came back to Beckley, worked for a law firm here doing civil investigation. I did that for about 3 years, and I was then recruited by a former law enforcement officer that I worked with, who was now working with the West Virginia State Insurance Commission's fraud unit. It was a new unit that had been created in West Virginia around 2015, 2016. So I joined that unit and did insurance fraud investigation for about 6 years until the state police had called me and then recruited me to come back to the state police because they wanted to stand up a financial crimes unit inside their Bureau of Criminal Investigation. They didn't have anybody doing that. They needed someone with some experience doing fraud investigations, so I went to the state police in 2013 and stayed there till 2019. In 2019, I applied for law school here in West Virginia and went to moved to Morgantown, attended law school starting in 2019. Law school is 3 years long, so I did that for 3 years. And then after law school, I took the bar in 2023. Was accepted to the state bar. I'm now a practicing attorney in Morgantown, West Virginia. I opened an office there, and I'm in my second year in private practice in Morgantown. And that's my storied career, part of it.
Was this case your last case in law enforcement?
This was the last criminal investigative case that I worked before I left the law enforcement community.
Your Honor, I ask that this be marked in States 1 for
Very well.
identification. Your Honor, I believe it'd be appropriate to read the 2 cautionary instructions at this time.
All right, members of the jury, normally the court would read to you what's called the jury charge at the end of all the evidence and before the closing arguments. Sometimes during the trial, the court must read to you a limiting or cautionary instruction, and that time has arisen. So I read to you these two instructions. The court instructs the jury that evidence of other crimes, wrongs, or acts by the accused is not to be considered to prove her character in order to show that she acted in conformity therewith. However, the jury may consider such evidence for other purposes, such as proof of motive, opportunity, intent, preparation, plan, identity, and absence of mistake or accident as to the crimes charged. The court has or will take judicial notice of court documents generated by the United States District Court, Southern District of West Virginia. That is, the court has or will take as a fact that the litigation in the United States District Court, Southern District of West Virginia, occurred based upon the determination of sources whose accuracy cannot reasonably be questioned. You are instructed, however, that you may or may not accept that fact as conclusive. All right, you may continue now, Mr. True.
Your Honor, before we begin, may defense counsel be shown the exhibit so we are on the same page?
Sure.
Show it to Matthew. We can see both. Bob, I hand you what's been marked for identification as State's Exhibit 1. Can you review and identify, please?
Yes, sir. These would be the federal documents. The financial crime in this case was charged through the federal government. So these are the federal documents that certify that an agreement was made by Ms. Cochran to plead to certain financial crimes, federal financial crimes, to resolve the financial crime that occurred with this investigation.
This was your last criminal investigation, correct?
Yes, sir.
And State's Exhibit 1 reflects the finality of that investigation for that part of the case. Is that a fair assessment?
It does.
Tell us some background as to what that case was about. What's a Ponzi scheme?
Let me start by saying that I just didn't go from law enforcement into doing financial crimes.
I'm sorry, I'm going to object. We don't need all the background. Let's just answer the questions.
All right, I'll give the witness some leeway. Sir, you can explain. Go ahead.
I have training in financial crimes. I'm a certified fraud examiner through the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. I have a master's in forensic accounting. During the course of that education and training, couched with the experience of conducting financial crimes over that 13-year period with the state police and with the Insurance Commission's fraud unit, as well as some other financial crimes that I worked during my uniform law enforcement days. I come to learn about the different various types of fraud and financial crimes that occur in society. So when I say fraud or I say financial crime, or I would say maybe a scam, I may use some terminology that's more or less synonymous as I discuss this. So if you hear me say fraud or scheme or scam, I'm generally talking about the same thing. The financial crime aspect of that term would apply to the violation of law or the criminal charge. So when we say a Ponzi scheme, we're talking about a type of fraud. And what a Ponzi scheme is, the term Ponzi is a name coined after a con man in the 1920s. So Ponzi itself means nothing, but the Ponzi scheme is a methodology of fraud And what that is it's an illegal business practice where someone would induce a person or a victim to invest money into a business, and then they would continue to get investors to invest money in the business, but later investors' money would be paid to earlier investors' money, and then that cycle would just continue over and over. So as new investors would invest in the business, then monies from that investor would be used to pay earlier investors. Now, the investment could be a number of things, but that basically is what a Ponzi scheme is, taking new investor money and paying earlier investors on money that they were supposed to receive from their earlier investment.
What do you look for when you suspect a Ponzi scheme?
Ponzi schemes are generally involving in a business. So when you're looking for certain red flags that may, with many scams and schemes and frauds, with the Ponzi scheme, if the investment opportunity, the very first indicator is that it sounds too good to be true. When that sounds too good to be true, that's typically the initial indicator or red flag. There may be promises that this investment is very low risk. You know, people who want to take their hard-earned money and invest in something to get money back want to make sure that they're not going to lose money. So there's typically a high reward with a low risk involved with inviting or inducing someone to invest in a company or a business. And then there's opportunities to reinvest that money. You know, if you've earned this money, and there's opportunities to reinvest. So there's different red flags, and they're not all, the indicators aren't always present in all scams or schemes, but those are some of the ones with the Ponzi scheme.
In this particular case, how did you become aware that there was an investigation to be opened?
This investigation opened from a businessman here in Beckley who was who was part of this overall financial
Your Honor, I'm sorry.
crime or scheme.
I'm going to object. Can we approach the bench on this one?
Sure.
Thank you, Your Honor. You can go ahead and answer the question. How did you open this case?
A local businessman who was involved with Ms. Cochran's business called a state trooper or ran into a state trooper that he knew who and asked, he was having problems with.
Now I'm going to object to hearsay, John.
Mrs. Day. I think we need to cut to the chase.
Okay. You opened an investigation.
Yes.
And you determined that the defendant was, in fact, operating a Ponzi scheme.
Yes. The defendant had a business and was operating a Ponzi scheme.
In summary fashion, what was the overview of the business that she pretended to have?
The business purported to be a supplier of durable goods and other materials to government contracts. So the federal government would need to buy supplies or goods. They would put out an announcement for businesses to bid on these contracts to fulfill their needs. And then federal contractors, businesses would bid on these contracts, get awarded the contract, then the business should supply the good to the government and get paid for the good they provided. That was the purpose of the business. That's what the business purported to be.
And you did an extensive investigation that culminated in the federal conviction that you have at State's Exhibit 1, correct?
Yes.
Now, the defense has floated the theory that Michael Cochran was up to his eyeballs in this Ponzi scheme. From your investigation, do you have any evidence that would support that?
let me state by saying the business itself, in its appearance, in its existence, was legitimate. The business was legitimately set up. It was registered with the state of West Virginia. It was registered with the federal government. So Michael Cochran was aware of the business, and because he participated with what he believed was a legitimate business.
I'm going to object, Judge, as to what Mr. Cochran may have believed. That's calls for speculation.
You can continue, please.
So during our investigation, we reviewed many financial records, many documents to determine if any government contracts existed, any federal government contracts had been awarded to this business, and we could not find any contracts whatsoever where the government had awarded these. Now there was one state of West Virginia contract that was that Mr. Cochran had, or the business had bid on, but they never fulfilled that contract. So beyond this one contract, there were never any contracts that we could find to support what the business purported to do. Also, in reviewing these documents, there were applications made to financial institutions, and many of those documents only bore the name of Mrs. Cochran in the business, and those documents would purport that she was a 100% owner of the business. So there was a suggestion or an indication that Mr. Cochran didn't know about certain documents, that because he wasn't listed on certain documents. In addition to that, the victim investors of this financial crime were given reasons. They were given information to induce their investment. They were given information regarding them getting their investment money returned to them, the money they should have earned on their investment. So the information that was false or deceptive that was being given to victim investors of the business was the exact same information that was being given to Mr. Cochran when he would question why the business hadn't received its money from the contracts. He did participate in looking for contracts for the business to bid on, but that was about the extent of his involvement. He would search the internet and the federal websites to identify federal contracts that the business could bid on. But the structure was that Mrs. Cochran would go out and secure those contracts from the government. So as far as Mr. Cochran knew, based on the records that we reviewed, the interviews that we did, he believed that they had obtained contracts and that they would be receiving money for these contracts. So he would ask the same questions that investors would ask: where's the money for this contract? And so that would indicate that he was not involved, because he's asking the same questions regarding monies and profits.
In your investigation, what do you base the fact that he was asking the same questions as the investigators? What do you base the conclusion that he was asking the same questions as the investors?
During our investigation, we reviewed many records, we consulted many agencies, we obtained records through subpoenas or search warrants, and we were able to get text message communication held by investors, and also as a result of some subpoenas and search warrants, we were able to...
I'm going to object to any third-party involvement in this and what the other parties have done. We have not been provided with that evidence, and the witness is testifying about something that is absolute hearsay.
Sustained.
You executed some search warrants and subpoenas for cell phone records, correct?
That's correct.
Did that include the defendant and messages back and forth between her and her husband?
That is correct.
Did you use that information to reach any conclusion as to Michael Cochran's knowledge as to what was going on with their purported businesses?
We did.
How did you verify that the conversations by text were actually between the defendant and Michael Cochran? How did you authenticate those documents?
Well, the holder of those records, we would issue a subpoena or to AT&T, for example, may hold business or phone records. We would issue legal subpoenas for those to get those records, and then we would review those records.
Well, I mean, how did you know that there were communications between Mr. Cochran and Mrs. Cochran?
Well, Mr. Cochran had an established phone number. Mrs. Cochran had an established cell phone number. So the records that we requested and reviewed were those cell phone records. We also received records from investors, victim investors of the business, and would compare those to the same communication. So we had multiple text message communication, some email communication that we reviewed to come to our conclusions.
Leading right up to the 5th of February 2019, you saw text messages between the defendant and her husband?
Yes.
What was the plan? How did it end up that they were going to fly to Lynchburg, Virginia? From your investigation, how do you know that?
Let me say this scheme began in 2017. So it had gone.
I'm going to object. The witness is not answering the questions.
I think he's trying to explain, and I'll give him leeway in that regard. You may continue, Mr. Hinman.
This Ponzi scheme began in 2017, mid-2017. And as it matured, more investors gave more money. There were other monies that were obtained through some loans that the Ms. Cochran would obtain. But there was still this need to return money back to the investors. The investors were still expecting money to be returned. The problem with the Ponzi scheme is it's short-lived.
Now I'm going to object. This question was asked and answered at least once.
Yeah, I think maybe we are getting a little far afield now. Perhaps another question would be in order, Mr. Truman.
Thank you. Let's just explore one other area. From your investigation, is there a single shred of evidence that supports the defendant's theory that Michael Cochran was going to turn his wife into the federal government?
No, sir, there was not.
That's all the questions the state has at this time. Thank you.
Cross-examination, Mr. Bishop.
Mr. Hinman, I understand that you were involved in every aspect of the federal investigation of Natalie Cochran. Is that right?
I left the state police before the indictment, before she was indicted.
Before the federal indictment.
Before the actual indictment occurred, but the information that was obtained to bring that about, yes.
Prior to that, you were involved in every aspect of that investigation.
Yes, sir.
All right. So you wouldn't know what the federal government alleged in the indictment?
No, I do know what they alleged in the indictment.
Well, is it true that the federal government alleged that both Mr. Cochran and Ms. Cochran got involved in a scheme, but Mr. Cochran died, what the federal government called unexpectedly in 2019? So she was the only one who got indicted. Is that true?
I would not characterize it as such.
No.
Did you see the forfeiture documents that the federal government filed against the Cochrans?
Yes, some of those.
Some of those. And in those documents, federal government alleges that they were both involved in the scheme, right?
Without reviewing the documents, I don't know.
All right, we'll come back to this. Who is Colonel Jan Cahill?
Colonel Cahill would be the superintendent of the state police during my last employment with the state police.
I'd like to mark this
All right, if you'll present it to the clerk, please.
as the defendant's exhibit number 1. I have provided a copy to the approach briefly, or
Yes, you may.
my approach.
Yes, you may.
Mr. Hinman, I'll hand you what's been marked as defendant's exhibit number 1. Would you tell the jury what that document is?
This is a communication, a letter that I prepared and sent to a federal investigator.
That was done in April of 2019, right?
Yes. It's dated April 2019.
And the subject of your correspondence was the Tactical Solution Group and the Technology Management Solutions. Would you tell us what those two organizations were?
Technology Management Solutions, or also known as TMS, was a West Virginia company formed in 2013 by Michael Cochran and Natalie Cochran.
How about the other one?
Tactical Solutions Group, also referred to as TSG, doing business as TSG, is the company that was formed in 2017 by Natalie Cochran and Michael Cochran, which the Ponzi scheme ran through.
All right. Now, looking at this document, is it true that you allege as the mode of operation that the Cochrans, plural, Cochrans, have been soliciting contract investors to invest funds into their company to be applied to government contracts? Plural. Cochrans.
Which paragraph, Mr. Victor?
Mode of operation, first page.
Yes, I see that.
So they were both involved in the soliciting government contracts, right? According to you.
Well, when this correspondence was written, we began the investigation 1 month prior to this correspondence, so we were still fact-finding. We didn't conclude that Mr. Cochran was or wasn't involved that early. We went into it as if both were involved. We didn't know. We hadn't collected all the evidence, reviewed all the documents and things of that nature. So
Mr. Hinman,
at that time, it still does list them as Cochrans.
Mr. Hinman, this investigation has been going on since 2017. Is that right?
No, sir.
When did you start this investigation, sir?
In 2019.
2019. So 2 months before months or so before the federal indictment?
The indictment wasn't in April.
Okay. So in 2019, you're still speculating whether they're both involved in this or whether just one of them is involved?
By the time the federal indictment occurred, we had concluded that Mr. Cochran did not know. We had spoken with witnesses, we had reviewed documents, we had got all of our records, we had subpoenaed in from third-party record holders.
Yes.
So it would be, no, we were open-minded. We didn't know to what extent either, or if they were, we were still collecting records.
Where is in this document that you are telling Colonel Cahill that this investigation is still in its infancy.
This letter is not addressed to Colonel Cahill, first of all. And I don't understand that really what your question is.
Well, tell us where in this document, written to Jeff, whoever Jeff is, does it say that this investigation has just started and we're collecting more data and we're going to talk to more witnesses?
The document says, Jeff, pleasure speaking with you this morning. This is a document that I prepared following a phone call with a special agent of the federal government who I had reached out to assist with getting records from federal government databases, and I was providing him the information he had requested so that he could do his search.
But I didn't ask you that, Mr. Hinman. I asked you to show me in this document where it says that we have just started the investigation of the Cochrans, plural. Where is it?
The document would not state that because that's not relevant to this document.
It wasn't relevant. Okay.
To this document, to
I see.
this special agent.
But you described in detail in this letter the mode of the operation of those two organizations, and you used the word Cochrans, plural, and now you also described how this alleged fraud is being perpetrated. Is that right?
This working document does describe some of the information we had learned at that point. Yes.
Then you also wanted to see the list of any contracts or any other documents that deal with the Cochrans. Page 2, what we need. Cochrans, not just Natalie Cochran. Is that right?
Is that a question?
Yeah?
I was trying to explain all this earlier, but
Well,
you
explain it to
objected.
me
And
like I'm 3 years old. Do you have in the what we need section of this document the statement that we need all the documents, date, numbers, dates, details, payments to TSG and or the Cochrans, again plural. Does it say that in your letter or not?
it does.
It does. How about in the mode of operation of this alleged fraud? When, and I'm reading from the top paragraph, 5th line. When maturity date occurs, TSG Cochrans notify investors of funds being in, but then offer them a partial payment. Fair to say that you use the word Cochrans again?
Yes, I use the word Cochran's again, referring to the Cochran's business, TSG and or TMS,
Okay.
Technology Solutions Group, Technology Management Solutions.
You testified that it is your, I guess, conclusion that Mr. Cochran didn't know anything about what Ms. Cochran was doing in terms of the fraud and the Ponzi scheme, right?
That's not accurate, no.
Okay. What did Mr. Cochran, well, illegitimate part of the business. Legitimate part of the business you testified that Mr. Cochran was involved in, right?
Mr. Cochran was involved to the extent that he did certain things. With the
Like
business.
what?
He would help locate contracts. He would do online internet searching of federal databases for government contracts that were available for bid from contractors. He would identify those contracts and provide them to Mrs. Cochran, who then would order those contracts or bid on those contracts so they could be awarded those contracts.
And he distanced himself from that point on, from anything to do with the contracts, right?
That is exactly what it appears. Two, but not, that's not all inclusive though. So,
All right. Now, have you, in your thorough investigation of this case, talked to the children of Mr. and Mrs. Cochran?
no.
Well, why not? They were adult by now.
Well, at the time they were children, they had nothing to do with the business, so we weren't.
Would it surprise you that if I told you that they observed their parents work on the federal contracts? That is, the father worked on the federal contracts while the mother was reading a newspaper or a book?
No, we know that. We know that exactly.
Well, wait a minute. So, Mr. Cochran is working on those contracts. My client is sitting peacefully reading a book, and you're telling this jury that he had no knowledge of these contracts?
I'm not telling the jury that. I've said that he knew about the contracts that he was led to believe were bid on by their business.
Okay.
We spoke with many witnesses who would see both the Cochrans on the internet looking.
Mr. Hinman, I'm sorry. I'm not interested in any other witnesses. I'm interested in this particular witness as a son or a daughter of the Cochrans. You don't know anything about what happened in the household of the Cochrans when Mr. Cochran was working on those contracts, do you?
We never interviewed the children. We never were in the house while they were working on contracts to observe what he did. So the answer would be no.
Now, this fraud resulted in what the prosecution described here as a lavish lifestyle for the Cochrans. Is that right?
Yes.
Well, let's start with the property that the Cochrans all of a sudden acquired. They had 3 homes, right?
Yes.
So, were those homes acquired simultaneously, or were they purchased during, one after another?
Based on my best memory, because I did not bring any asset schedules up with me, they were purchased at different times.
Okay. And they were not the cheapest of properties, were they?
No, they were not.
What did Mr. Cochran do for a living, sir?
Mr. Cochran's profession or occupation was he was an IT or internet technology specialist. He dealt with networking, setting up IT and networking. That's what his training and certification was, and that's what the business technology management solution would have also done: install wiring, phone lines, computer lines, network things.
What was his job? Where did he derive his income from?
Doing that from 2013 to
Okay.
2017. He also worked for Workforce West Virginia, either as a salaried employee or a subcontractor, doing just that, networking and internet support for them.
Well, how much money was he making a year? Do you know?
Which year?
Well, let's say 2013.
I don't think we pulled his wages back to 2013.
All right, 2017.
That I can give you. His last reported wages Oh, his last reported wages were in 2013, the second quarter of 2013.
So you really don't know how much money this man was making from any source to give us an estimate as to how much money the family made.
We looked at the Cochran's personal bank accounts
Yeah.
for their business bank accounts,
Well,
and we found sources of income. The focus of our investigation was sources of income from these federal contracts and
Right.
federal government.
and I'm trying to, Natalie Cochran was a pharmacist, right?
Yes,
Her income was about 120 grand a year. Wasn't it?
I'm not sure.
All right.
We'll,
But his income, as we sit here today before the jury, we still cannot identify. Can we? His individual income.
to a certain point, we can. We
Well-
can. Yes, we can. I can't provide you numbers, but we can. We see what was legitimate income. We see what was not legitimate income.
Was his income, even combined with Natalie Cochran, such that allowed the purchase of 3 real estate properties that would go into thousands of dollars?
Can you
And more specifically,
clarify the 3 properties you're referring to?
property on 219 North Eisenhower Drive, property at 210 Parkwood Drive, property at 433 4H Lake Drive, all subject to subsequent forfeiture.
Yes, the last one, the home on 4H Lake Road, that home was held by them before the Ponzi scheme began. The other 2 properties were purchased with proceeds from the Ponzi schemes during the period of the Ponzi scheme.
And one day, Ms. Cochran sits at home and her husband walks in and says, "Honey, we just got the property with thousands of dollars." Or she walks in and says, "Honey, we just got the property worth thousands of dollars." And he says, "What to it?" Wouldn't it be surprising to you, Mr. Hinman, that all that lavish lifestyle was sudden and enormous, and any reasonable person such as Mr. Cochran would ask where the money came from? Wouldn't that be the case?
That's a mischaracterization of our investigation. And,
Okay.
and I don't know what your question.
Then the answer is no.
Would I be surprised?
Yeah.
Was that the question?
Well, no. Well, would you be surprised? Your wife walked in with a new real estate that she just purchased for X thousands of dollars. Wouldn't you want to question where she got that property? Unless you knew what the source of that income was. Would that be right?
I don't know.
I don't know. Well, all of a sudden, Mr. Cochran can afford a listen to this, 1965 Shelby Cobra replica, an antique car, thousands of dollars. He drives in front of the house and says, "Honey, I just got me a nice little car." Wouldn't that be a question mark for anybody in the family where that money came from?
I don't know. I know where it came from.
Well,
I don't know what people in the family believed.
okay. Well, then we have a Yamaha motorcycle, 2017. 2014 B-Tex dump trailer. Another Yamaha motorcycle. Polaris model. I take it as another motorcycle. Another big trailer. A Yamaha Timberwolf. Honda Rubicon. 2 diamond earrings. One of those earrings was like $14,000, wasn't it? His gift to Natalie.
What was the purchase date of it?
Like $14,000.
The purchase date?
The earrings, the jewelry.
Purchase date? What year?
I think it was 2018.
19?
2018.
18? And yes, that would be derived from proceeds from the Ponzi scheme as well.
That's right. So he has all that money at his disposal, and he doesn't know where that money comes from, having no identifiable job.
He believed it came from a business called TSG that they ran together, getting federal contracts.
And you believe that? That's your opinion.
The evidence points in that
The
direction.
evidence? All right.
Let's stop at this juncture. I hate to interrupt cross-examination, but we do need a comfort break. We've gone on a little too far, and I want to take a brief recess at this time. We'll break for about 10 minutes, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Please do not discuss the case among yourselves or with anyone else, and you may go with the All right, we continue with cross-examination of the witness. Please, Mr. Victor.
Mr. Hinman, did you know that Mr. and Mrs. Cochran did not have any, or did not list any, source of income past 2017? Did you know that or not?
They didn't list it where?
On their tax returns.
No,
You didn't know that, okay?
I don't know if that's true, but I did not know.
But I didn't ask you whether you knew it was true. I just asked you whether you knew that they did that. And the answer is no. Now, did you know, did you look at the, well, I mean, you investigated this case thoroughly. Did you ever consider looking at the forfeiture clause or forfeiture document filed by the federal government? Did you?
Again, this came after I had already left, so
Okay.
I
So-
didn't see this at that time,
Okay.
no.
So if I told you that in the year of 2018, under Schedule C for Tactical Solutions, Mr. and Mrs. Cochran listed the gross sales and gross profits for the Tactical Solution Group, the gross profit of $12,406,564. Would that surprise you?
No, I did see those documents, yes.
Mr. Hinman, the wife comes home and the husband comes home and says, "Honey, we just filed the taxes. Our income is $12 million." And then what?
That's not how the documents ran with this business or with the Cochrans, so that would not be the case.
For the profit of the TSM, $12 million. Where did that come from, sir? And even better, the wife says to, the husband says to the wife, "Honey, where did that 12 mil come from?" And you still testify here today under oath that he didn't know anything about the illicit Ponzi scheme? Is that your testimony here today?
Yes, He did not know anything about the Ponzi scheme.
Okay. Well, he obviously listed as the place for the mail for the Tactical Solution Group, P.O. Box 667, as a general customer, is Michael Cochran, didn't he?
I don't know what you're looking at, Mr. Victor.
Okay. May I have this mark
Certainly.
as, I'm gonna hand the, I'm gonna hand the prosecution a copy of this. And may I have this marked
To defendant's
as
exhibit number
defendant's
2.
exhibit number 2?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And may I approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
Mr. Hinman, I'm gonna hand you what's been marked as defense exhibit number 2 and tell us whether you know what this is.
No, Mr. Victor, I can't say I know what this is.
You don't know? Does it say P.O. Box 667 for Tactical Solution and gives the address of 4334 H Lake Road, Daniels, West Virginia? Would that be the address of Mr. and Mrs. Cochran's house?
That is the address of their house.
Right? And now they've been assigned a P.O. Box number 667 for that address. True? You can look at the very top of the document to just see P.O. Box 667. Don't you? Yes or no?
This document does say box number 667.
All right.
However, it doesn't
No,
have
no.
any dates on
doesn't-
it.
No, Mr.
Okay.
Hinman.
Okay, I'm
Does it
just-
say P.O. Box 667 for that particular address?
I want to answer the questions intelligently, but I need to
Well, you
know.
can answer that on redirect.
Okay.
Does it list P.O. Box 667 for that home address of Mr. and Mrs. Cochran?
It lists 2 P.O. boxes here, so.
All right. Well, then
It
let's
says,
start
yes,
with
667 is one of those.
All right. And who is the customer on the front page?
Tactical Solutions Group LLC.
All right. And then there is P.O. Box 782, also listed on that front page, right?
Yes.
And that is, who is the customer for that?
That says Michael Cochran.
All right. And on page 2, P.O. Box 667 is assigned to Tactical Solution Group, right?
Yes.
And then it says individual right after that in like little brackets, and it says Michael Cochran, right?
Did you say blue brackets?
It's a little bracket, May.
Yes, that says Michael Cochran there.
And P.O. Box 782 is, again, Michael Cochran as a customer.
Yes.
Now, may I retrieve the exhibits? Oh, by the way, I moved for the admission of defendant's exhibit number 1, if I forgot, and also number 2.
Any objection, Mr. Truman?
Okay, no objection either.
All right, defendants' exhibits numbers 1 and 2 will be admitted into evidence.
May I retrieve the exhibits, please? So would you agree with me, sir, that all the mail that comes to the tactical solution, the tactical solution group comes to the PO box owned by Michael Cochran, and he has access to it, obviously. True?
No.
No? Okay. One of these companies dealt with firearms. True?
Yes, sir.
Military equipment. True?
Purportedly, yes, sir.
What my clients, do you know from your thorough investigation of this case, what is my client's experience with firearms and military gear?
I don't believe your client has any experience with firearms or military gear that I'm aware of.
However, Mr. Cochran seems to have plenty of experience with that, right?
I think he was a fan of those things. I don't think he ever served in the military.
No. He was a fan of the military equipment.
The persona.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, he is actually listed as the partner in both of these firms, right?
Yes and no.
Yes and no?
Yes and no.
Okay. Well, let's see. Well, let's start with something different. Registration status that is registered with, I believe, the Secretary of State. May I have this marked as defendant's sequential exhibit? May I approach?
Yes, you may.
I'll show you what's been marked as defendant's exhibit number 3 and ask you to turn to page 2 and tell the jury what that document says.
The documents, page 2 of 5, is a printout. What all do you want me to read?
Well, let me ask you this. Isn't it the registration of the business called Tactical Solution Group, LLC? At least that's what it says, right?
On this document, yes, it does
Well-
say that.
And to renew the registration, it shows all kinds of computer possibilities, HTTPS, whatnot. But then it has a name of somebody who is related to Tactical Solution Group and who is apparently registering this business. Who would that be? On page 2.
Michael Cochran.
Do you see anywhere there in this document
Not on this document, no, sir.
the name of Natalie Cochran?
No, sir, not that document.
All right. Move for admission into the evidence of defendant's exhibit number 3.
All right.
I moved for the admission. I don't.
Any objection, Mr. Truman?
No objection.
Defendant's exhibit number 3 will be admitted into evidence.
I'd like to have this marked as the defendant's exhibit number 4. May I approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
Going to show you what's been marked as defendant's exhibit number 4. Would you tell us what that is?
It appears to be a photograph without a date of a business card that says Technology Management Solutions, LLC.
Okay. Who is the owner and the operator?
The owner and operator on this card is Michael B. Cochran.
Okay. He is licensed and insured, correct?
Yes,
And
according to this card.
Of course, according to his card. We're looking at exhibit number 5, Mr. Hinman.
This says exhibit
4.
number 4.
4. He gives a direct phone number for those who wish to contact him, doesn't he?
There is a phone number on the card, yes.
Okay. And he also gives his email address, right?
There's an email on here, yes.
And that's M. Cochran, not N. Cochran. True?
That is correct.
All right. If I may retrieve this. And I'd like to move it into the evidence.
Any objection, Mr. Truman?
No objection.
It is admitted.
Your Honor, I may retrieve another document,
All right.
which... No, that's exhibit. No, I cannot retrieve it. Is it true that Mr. Cochran signed all kinds of checks on behalf of his business?
There were checks signed by Mr. Cochran, yes.
Dealing with the operation of the of the business.
Can we clarify which business or both businesses?
Well, Technical Solution Group. I'm going to show you a couple of exhibits. And I have provided copies to the state. ask that these exhibits be perhaps marked collectively in a sequential number.
All right. You've got copies of these, Mr. Truman?
I do, yes, sir.
No. No, just collectively. Thank you. May I approach the witness?
Yes, you may.
I'm going to show you what we marked as the defendant's exhibit number 5. Would you take a look at these pages and tell us what you see?
You want me to describe everything?
Well, no, just tell us what these pages represent.
Page 1 of the one that has a stapled page is a photocopy of a check, a Tactical Solutions Group check number 1095, City National Bank. It's attached to a printout of what appears to be a partial screenshot of a web page pertaining to the ATF.
Who is this check for? Who is it payable to?
I believe it says Morpho Trust on it.
Okay. Who signed this check?
This particular check number 1095, is signed by Michael Cochran.
Okay. Next check. Who is it for?
The next 3 documents are single pages. They all are photocopies of checks written on City National Bank in the name of Tactical Solutions Group.
Signed by whom?
Check 1216, the first document is signed by what appears to be Michael Cochran.
Who is it
Even
payable?
though it's,
Who is it payable to?
I'm not sure. This one is made payable to Jason Bowen.
For what? Can you tell?
What amount?
Well, what amount?
Oh, May 18th, 2018, a check to Jason Bowen, $1,000, and that is for labor remodeling of 219 North Eisenhower Drive, which is the...
I didn't ask you what it is. I asked you what it says.
The second one, check 1268, dated 6/21/2018, that is written, same account number, same bank, to Jason Bowen for $1,000 for labor for remodeling work,
Okay.
TSG.
That would be Tactical Solution Group, right? Right?
Yes.
Okay.
August 31st, 2018, check 1405, same bank, check written to Jonathan Miller for $1,200. And in the memo line, it says labor for TSG.
If I may retrieve the exhibit and move for the admission of the defendant's exhibit number 5.
Any objection, Mr. Truman?
No objection, Your Honor.
Defendant's number 5 is admitted into evidence.
Would you agree with me, Mr. Heisman, that Mr. Cochran is intimately involved in the running of the operation of TSG?
No, sir, I would not agree
No.
with that.
Now, he signs checks for the workers who perform improvements on his place of business. He gets involved in the running the operation daily, and you would not agree that he is actually a member of, well, actually runs the daily affairs in this company.
No.
Okay. How many checks can you tell me Natalie Cochran signed for any operation of the business?
The majority of the checks that we reviewed were signed by Natalie Cochran.
Well, can you show me any that deal with the business, day-to-day business operations of the TSG?
Yes.
Well, as you sit here today, you have any of them? Any copies?
Not with me, sir, no.
Okay. Let's assume that she signed it. We have already acknowledged, did we not, that she was part and parcel of this business, right?
Yes, she was.
However, you're claiming that Mr. Cochran didn't seem to know anything about it.
That was not my testimony, no.
Okay. He only knew the legitimate parts of it, right?
No, sir, that's not what I said.
All right. Now, when the Cochrans asked for a loan, who asked for a loan?
Which loan are we talking about?
Tactical Solutions Group, when they asked for a loan to run their business. Who asked for that loan?
There were several loans, so which loan?
Well, let's
can we
start with
can we
this one.
be more specific?
It is marked as defendant's sequential exhibit.
This is number 6, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.
May I approach?
Yes, you may.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked as the defendant's exhibit number 6. Would you tell us whether this is what it is, first of all?
This is a poor copy, photocopy of some type of perhaps loan document from a bank. Maybe City National Bank.
Poor copy it is. So let's see who's signed this poor copy for a loan.
Natalie Cochran and Michael Cochran.
Right. May I retrieve the exhibit and move for the permission and the evidence?
Dated 9/27/2017.
Any objection, Mr. Truman?
No objection.
And when
It's
you,
admitted.
thank you, Ron. And when you apply for a loan, you have to disclose your financial status. Is that true?
Generally, yes.
Well, you're a fraud expert here. You touted your credentials here in the financial world. So I ask you a simple question: if you apply for a loan for a banking institution, do you have to disclose your financial status?
Generally, yes.
Right. Now, do you know what type of information was disclosed to that bank in asking for the loan?
Again, which loan are we referring to?
The one
Mr.
that I showed you right now in exhibit number 5.
That is two documents out of many documents of a bank loan.
didn't
So
ask you
I
about
do
that.
not know without having adequate documents to review. So I don't know what was given.
So you don't remember whether they disclosed any financial information to any bank in asking for a loan?
I can answer that generally, or I can answer that specifically.
Well, then let me ask you whether you, in your thorough investigation of the case, concluded that they were both or individually filing for a loan, first of all. You have the evidence that they have so far, right?
That they have filed for loans.
For loans. And in your thorough investigation of the case, did you conclude or did you learn that Mr. Cochran was actually disclosing his income or the TSG's income in the application for the loan? Do you know or do you not? Well, you prepared for this trial, Mr. Hinman. You have had at the disposal of the financial documents.
2 years worth of financial documents. We need to be specific about which document, which loan we're
Well, I
talking
asked you
about.
about this one. You don't.
It's an inadequate copy. I don't know. I can't even verify which bank it was. There were many financial institutions involved in these businesses and with the scheme. So
All right. Have you ever talked to Michael Cochran?
I met. Well, yes, I met Michael Cochran, the deceased Michael Cochran,
Yes, the
at least
deceased
two
Michael
times.
Cochran.
His father's
Okay.
named Michael Cochran. So
Okay. The deceased Michael Cochran.
I think 2 times I met Mr. Cochran.
And you discussed his business with him?
Neither time.
Well, when did you talk to him?
I
year?
think I attended a board meeting for Shady Spring Football Board and parents that was the subject of a complaint of a embezzlement that Trooper Alan Marsh of the West Virginia State Police was investigating. He consulted with me and asked me to come to this meeting
Okay.
and help him with this investigation. And I think I met Michael Cochran. He was at the meeting, may have been introduced, may not have.
But on neither occasion did you talk to him about Natalie Cochran's business, correct?
Those were not the nature of the contacts.
Well, yes or no? Come on.
No, that's a,
All right.
that's a
Now-
negative.
Now, so would it be fair to say that at no point did Mr. Cochran come to you and said, officer, detective, whatever your status was at that time, I think my wife is doing something really shady. I need to really talk to some police officers, or I need to really report my wife, maybe to the feds. Nothing like that ever happened, right?
No, sir.
Okay. And you've concluded from all of this, all of your investigation, that Ms. Cochran was running into a financial scheme that was, of course, illegal, right? True?
Yes.
And that Mr. Cochran didn't know anything about it, okay? Right?
He was unaware of the illegality portion of the business,
He was
yes.
blissfully unaware of any illegality of it. Now, isn't it true that he actually received almost $44,000 from his parents for the investment of this business?
Yes. Yes, they did.
Well, what other money from the investors were directed to Mr. Michael Cochran just directly? Do you know?
Is this are you springing off the first question?
Well, let me just do this. If I may have this marked. That's the defendant's exhibit number. That would be 7.
Number 7.
Number 7. May I approach the witness, please?
Certainly.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked as defendant's exhibit number 7, and this is a document in this shape that I received. Would you kindly look at this document and tell the jury what this document is?
Some sort of financial document.
All right. Let me maybe let's read together. This has been provided to us by the prosecution, so I'm reading. The Bank of America Visa, Donna K. Bolt and Edward Wayne Bolt, victims of fraud. Who are the Bolts, sir?
Edward Wayne Bolt and Donna K. Bolt, husband and wife. Donna is the biological mother of the decedent Michael Cochran, and Edward is her husband,
So the mother-
stepfather of Michael Cochran.
All right, so the mother and the stepfather of Michael Cochran.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to be providing Mr. Michael Cochran on page 1, page 2, page 3, and page 4 directly with substantial amounts of money, right? Amounting to about 44,000. If you want to count. What's your answer?
Can you repeat the question?
This document shows in different locations the payments made by Mr. and Mrs. Bolt, in this case, victims of fraud, as it says, substantial direct payments to Michael Cochran in the amount of sum total of about $44,000. Does that be a fair assessment?
I don't know.
You don't know? Well, then let's go line by line. On the front page, on December the 8th, and posting date December 9th, it says SQ Michael Cochran Daniels, reference number 8086, account number 6008, $11,821. Do you see that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I believe so.
How about 12/4, posted 12/15, SQ Michael Cochran, reference number 2358, same account number, $1,648.79. Do you see it?
Yes.
On 2/4 and 2/5, I'm sorry, on the second page, on February 4th, posted February 5th, SQ Michael Cochran Daniels, reference number 4817, $1,448. Do you see it?
Yes.
Then on page 3, on February 15th, well, February 14th, and February 15th, on Valentine's Day, they must have been very generous because they posted $2,431, and the same day, $6,302, and the next day, they sent to Mr. Cochran $7,000. Do you see it?
I do see that.
Well, is there any doubt in your mind that this was sent to Mr. Cochran as part of his investment? Or their investment in his company?
They appear to be investments into the company.
And so they sent that money directly to Michael Cochran?
That would be incorrect.
No?
No, sir.
No? Who did they send it to, sir?
They sent it to what appears to be a Square app. It's a
Okay.
financial app that was under the control of Natalie Cochran and Michael Cochran.
Right? Well, we've already established that Natalie Cochran is a bad girl. But we were trying to establish whether Mr. Cochran had any of that knowledge that the money that was being invested, he had the knowledge of. That was invested
He
as
was
part of his scheme.
He was aware that his mom and his stepdad were investing money into the business.
Okay. Who else invested in his business that you know he was aware of?
Natalie Cochran's parents, the Jessups, Daphne Jessup and Larry Jessup.
So, well, how much did they invest? Do you remember?
Initially, roughly $76,000 from May 30th, 2017 to March 21st, 2019.
And Mr. Cochran was aware of that, right?
I don't know about theirs. I think he was, yes.
All right. Who else invested in that company that you are aware of?
Did you want me to go down the entire list?
Oh, sure.
Okay. So there was, appears to be Natalie Cochran's parents, Larry and Daphne Jessup, Michael Cochran's parents, or his mom, Donna Bolt, and stepdad, Eddie Bolt. Then Natalie Cochran's sister, Penny Carrico, was an investor into the business. Penny Carrico is now Penny Lowry. She had a boyfriend named Mario Lowry at the time. He was an investor into the business. Then Natalie Cochran has a sister named Wendy, and her husband John Poteet. They own a business here in Raleigh County.
How much did they invest?
Over $490,000.
And Michael Cochran was aware of that, wasn't he?
Do we continue with the list?
No, I just asked you a question, whether Michael Cochran was aware of that investment of almost $500,000.
Yes and no.
Yes and no? Well, which is it?
Well,
Did he know?
he was aware of some. He was not aware of others. And then he was not aware of the extent of some of the investments or the repeat
Well,
investments.
how
of the
would you know
investors.
that? This is the money sent to his account, isn't it?
Well,
Isn't it?
I know that from my investigation, from reviewing financial documents, text messages, and
What
interviewing witnesses.
investigation? Tell us specifically what you investigated.
It was the investigation that I was previously trying to explain that you objected to and we never got to. And now
Your
we're talking about fragments of that investigation
As
here
you,
on Cross.
as you sit here, Mr. Hinman, you have to admit that Mr. Cochran was fully aware of large chunks of money that was being shipped to his company that he was a partner in. Wasn't he?
Mr. Cochran was aware of large sums of money coming to his business.
How much money was there total that was invested in TSG?
The victim,
Not the victim. How much money was
the
invested?
total victim amount that was addressed in the federal charges was over $2 million.
Over $2 million. And you're telling this court, and what happened with that money, by the way, once it was invested? They lived high on a hog, didn't they?
Yeah, that was part of it, yes.
Right. And so Mr. Cochran gets a nice shot of over $2 million, and all of a sudden he takes everybody to France. He goes on a trip to Hawaii, takes the family, buys himself a nice vehicle. Oh, for that matter, he even wants to buy a hangar for his helicopter, right?
That's correct.
And he knows nothing about the Oh, by the way, how much did he pay the investors so far? Out of the money, well, I mean, they invested in something. Now they're expecting a return, right? Would you agree with me that any reasonable investor would expect a return on especially $494,000?
Yeah, they would, but they were expecting more than that.
Well, they were expecting, but they were expecting maybe more than that, but they were really expecting cash income from this, right?
That's what all the investors
Okay.
expected, yes.
Right. So they were expecting that. Well, how much out of this over $2 million that Mr. Cochran knew about and that was invested in TSG, how much of that money did he return to the investors as their profit?
That question cannot be answered.
Cannot be answered.
No, it cannot be answered because that's not how these the Ponzi scheme and investments, everything
All right.
works.
So this is the Ponzi scheme. Would you agree with me? Is to rob Peter to pay Paul, right?
Yes.
So we robbed somebody of $464,000. We robbed Peter of $246,000 or something like that. How much did Paul get? That can be answered easily.
I know that the average investment return rate was around 30% on most of the investors. So
On paper, wasn't it? On paper, in Mr. Cochran's head, Their investment return was negative because Mr. Cochran, as part of the this conspiracy, appropriated the money of the investors, didn't he? And lived high on a hog, traveling to Europe, Hawaii, and buying houses, real estate, cars, and everything else. Isn't that a fact,
No,
Mr.
sir.
Heisman? No?
No, it cannot be characterized like that, because that's not a
Okay,
proper
well, then he-
characterization of.
Okay, I'll
circumstances.
rephrase it. He lived not high on a hog. He lived in a luxury, right? He offered scholarships to people out of the money that the investors sent him, didn't he?
No, I'm not aware of him offering scholarships
Well,
to anyone. I know that Natalie Cochran offered scholarships out of the illicit proceeds from
well,
the Ponzi
we
scheme.
know that Natalie is committed
No,
some-
no, Mr. Cochran did not. Again, there are blended facts of veracity, truth in what you're saying.
blended.
Yeah, your statements have part truth or part fact that can be supported by the investigation, and some of it is mischaracterizations not supported by facts. So
Well,
some of these answers I can't.
Then
Give it-
tell us what happened to the money, for example, that the Bolts, Mr. and Mrs. Bolt, invested with their beloved son.
The Bolts.
$44,000.
How much?
44 grand. You saw it in the
Well,
exhibit.
that's a portion of their investment.
All right. That's
So-
even better. So they invested more. What happened?
Some
what
of
happened to all
some of
the-
their invested money, and I don't know if they ever got anything back, but their money was used to pay other investors.
Right. So
Part
their
of the
beloved
Ponzi.
son did not even pay his own mother? On her investment?
Michael Cochran was not aware that his mom was not getting paid. He was not aware of the other investors. He discovered in August of 2018.
You're speculating. You're making this stuff up as you go along.
What I'm saying can be supported by third-party records, which I cannot manipulate, witness statements that we collected during our investigation, review of documents. No, I could support what I'm saying.
Were there any exchanges between Natalie and Mr. Cochran that you are aware of concerning that business?
Yes, there were lots of communication between Natalie Cochran and Michael Cochran pertaining to the business.
Isn't it true that actually Mr. Cochran was telling Natalie, will you wait for me, I'll make the decisions? In so many words, during the exchanges. Are you aware of that or not?
I need more information, Mr. Victor, to.
Ms. Cochran could not make her own decisions in this business, could she? Without Michael's approval.
That's not correct, no, sir.
You don't know the inner workings of the relationship, do you?
Not accurately, no. I was not part of the
No.
relationship.
You don't know who was the dominant individual in the marriage and in the business, right?
I have a pretty good idea based on witness statements and reviewing text messages and things of that nature. Yes.
Okay. Well, let's do it this way. You know about Mr. Michael Cochran's fascination with bodybuilding and being really a macho guy.
Yes.
And you have the same evidence of Natalie Cochran being fascinated with, bodybuilding, being, aggressive and all that. You have any?
Not bodybuilding, no,
No,
sir.
bodybuilding. If you heard the testimony that Mr. Cochran was the dominant character in their marriage, would that surprise you?
No, I would expect to hear that, and I would also expect to hear the same about her in testimony. So I would hear both of that. I would hear that, yes.
Of course, you didn't talk to the children, right?
No,
So
sir.
you don't know what was happening in their marriage and in their relationship. And you talked to, I would imagine, her parents, right?
Her parents, Natalie's parents,
Right.
they would not cooperate and talk with law enforcement, no.
No, they wouldn't cooperate with you. Okay. Well, how about the cousins? Did you interview them? No.
Who are the cousins?
Well, anybody who claimed to be the Cochrans, Natalie Cochran's relatives.
We interviewed her sisters, Penny Carrico.
Okay.
We interviewed her sister and her husband, John Poteet, and Wendy Poteet.
And they were the investors, right?
Yes, every name I just mentioned were investors.
Okay.
We
And-
interviewed
and
close
the
friends.
And the
Yes,
Poteets lost a lot of money, didn't they?
They did.
All right.
Take pause at this time. We passed the
Very-
lunch hour, and I think
I'm sorry,
that,
Your Honor.
now would be a good time to take our lunch. And I again apologize for interrupting cross-examination, but we simply need to observe a lunch break at this time. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break till 1:15, and I apologize to you folks. We're a little bit late, but we sometimes have to go with the flow of the evidence. Please do not discuss the case among yourselves or with anyone else. Enjoy your lunch and try to be back in your jury room a little bit before 1:15. You may go with the bailiff now to your jury. You may be seated. All right, we continue with cross-examination, please, but first, of course, we need the jury. Do we have any matters to take up out of the presence of the jury, Mr. Truman?
Could we have the equipment off again since we're still?
I didn't-
Could we have the equipment off again?
Okay.
Yes, sir. Thanks. Thank you.
Any matters to take up from the defense out of the presence?
No, Your Honor. No, thank you.
Bring in the jury, please. All right, now we continue, please, Mr. Victor.
I just have a few more questions. The TSG, who was the majority owner of it?
By the Secretary of State's office. It does not list a percentage ownership. It shows organizers and members. And for the TSG, the organizer was Natalie Cochran, and a member was Michael Cochran.
Was there
Now-
ever any document or any agreement or anything that would suggest that Natalie Cochran was the 51% majority owner and Michael Cochran was 49% minority owner with the daily production to be his responsibility?
There are documents that indicate ownership percentage.
Okay. And that would be the percentage that you would recall from memory? 51-49?
There are financial documents wherein Natalie Cochran claimed to be 100% owner of TSG. There is one document that is a handwritten application for a financial loan where she listed herself as 51% and Michael Cochran as 49%. Otherwise, the remaining documents pertaining to financial transactions that we reviewed, she claimed to be 100% owner of TSG.
Okay. Tell us about their office. What did their office look like?
They had a storefront located on North Eisenhower Drive.
Okay. Secretaries?
No,
Uh,
not that I'm aware of.
any equipment that would suggest it's a running office?
It was new in relation to his death, but there was computers in the office. There were
Okay.
office space.
Or where was that office established?
The physical location.
Yeah, the TSG. You know?
It was the building was purchased in January 2018.
By whom?
Natalie Cochran and Michael Cochran.
Okay. And then the business was named TSG, and the front was devoted to that business, right?
The store.
The front store or whatever it was.
It had signage
Okay.
indicating the same signage and logo that were used on their website is the same signage that was used on the storefront.
Would you agree with me that, however, that most of the businesses was done online? Well, they didn't have a secretary. They didn't have anybody to welcome.
There was no legitimate business that was completed online or otherwise, so there was the appearance of a legitimate business,
I see.
and they were registered. That it's our belief, when this company was created, it was a good business plan. It was created legitimately, legitimate credentials, legitimate application and certification. It had the potential to be a legitimate business, but it never conducted any legitimate business.
Right. All right. That's all I have. Thank you.
Redirect Mr. Truman.
Thank you. Defendants one, please. Any what's been admitted as defendant's exhibit 1. That's your letter to Jeff?
Yes, it is.
Okay. April 1st of 2019. When did you open this investigation?
March 8th, I believe, was when we opened it.
Did you open it as soon as Trooper Marsh talked to you about it?
No, I had two conversations with Trooper Marsh. An initial call in which he tried to explain that he had a situation he didn't know how to deal with, and he gave me some, and that was on March 8th, and he gave me some initial facts. And I said, well, I need more information. So he went back to his complainant, the local businessman person, who then gave him more information, and I spoke with Trooper Marsh on March 11th. It was after my discussion with him on March 11th that we started exploring the opening of the investigation into the.
So, after March 11th, you'd had roughly 3 weeks before you wrote this letter. Had you done any investigation before then?
That was part of the research and investigative efforts coordinating with the special agent of the federal government.
Did you know much about the Cochran's business as of April 1st of 2019?
No, we were still collecting factual records, identifying people. We were collecting information. We made no assumptions of who was guilty or not guilty of anything. It had the appearance of a legitimate business. So that was early in the investigation. It's our responsibility to collect information as part of that investigation, and that is part of those evidence or information collecting efforts, that correspondence. Simply put, the agent asked me to request the information I was seeking from him on department letterhead, and that's why it has the superintendent's name and the letterhead of the agency.
Okay. You were soliciting assistance
Yes.
and explaining what you were going to try to accomplish.
He was a federal government special agent. These were federal government contracts, so we needed a federal resource to explore contracts down the federal database.
Your Honor, I'm
Aaron.
going to object.
As on grounds of relevancy, I think we've been through this fraud case a long time. There's nothing to do with murder.
Anyway, what's been admitted as Defendant's Exhibit 3. Is that a document from the West Virginia Secretary of State?
No, it's not.
Is it a private company that printed that information?
The website is the federal registration database where you would go in and make application for federal licensing and federal registration is what that appears to be.
Well, it's a private company, isn't it? This particular website. That's not a government agency, is it? It's not a .gov.
I'm going to object to the legal nature of these questions.
Is it a .gov address?
No, sir.
With all the questions about what Michael Cochran knew and didn't know, do you have any evidence that he knew that this was a fraud being carried on?
No.
That's all the questions the state has. Thank you.
Recross, Mr. Victor.
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Sir, you may step down. Thank you. Through the trial, or do you
Yes.
move that he be excused?
Now, he's going to stay.
All right.
Thank you.
Call your next witness, Mr. Truman.
She is ascending the elevator as we speak, Jennifer Davis. Time the cross was going to take.